All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the joint meeting of the Historical Commission and the Historic District Commission. It's Monday, August 16th, and it is 6:03 p.m. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made whether perceived or unperceived and are deemed, or whether perceived or unperceived by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Can I please get a roll call? I will call your name and then just let me know that you are present. Connie Sewell?
Present.
Okay, and this is for the Historical Commission. Ruben Amaral?
Present.
Richard Mancini?
Present.
Joyce Rodrigues?
Present.
And Kristen Cantera Oliveira present. We do have 2 open seats now on the Historical Commission. We did have one of our commissioners resign, and that was Patty Rigo, and I will just read her resignation. She sent it on Thursday, July 29th. And it says, Madam Chairperson, I am writing this letter as a formal resignation of my seat on the Historical Commission effective as of the date noted above. Due to the increasing personal and professional obligations, I feel that I am no longer able to devote the time and focus that this commission deserves. It has been an honor to serve on the Fall River Historical Commission for the past 2.5 years, and I look forward to your continued effort to champion the importance of historic preservation in the city. Respectfully, Patty Rigo. So I would just like to thank Patty for everything that she's done and all the help that she's given us on the Historical Commission, and just to wish her well in her endeavors. I know she's really busy working on projects that definitely are going to move the city forward. So.
I'll second that. She has always been a bright, shining light at our meetings. She's always smiling and full of energy. So yeah, she's going to be missed.
Yeah.
It was good for the commission, but she's good for the city, and that's what she's looking to do, make it better for everyone.
She is. She's doing some great things. So people, everyone out there, keep an eye out for Patty Rigo and Viva Fall River and all the things that she's doing. Okay, so next is the Historic District Commission roll call. So for that, Connie Sewell, you're on mute.
Present.
Ruben Amaral, I'm sorry, Richard Mancini,
Present.
Jason Bouchard-Naraki,
Present.
and Kristen Cantera Oliveira present. And we do have 3 open seats on the Historic District Commission. And I would like it to be known to everyone that all of our attendees tonight on the commission are attending virtually by Zoom. Okay, so first off, citizen input. We don't have any citizen input this evening. And next up on the agenda, we have for our old business, we have Dominique Hawkins, and she is going to be working with us again on the Historic Preservation Guidelines project. So Dominique, are you there?
I am here.
Okay.
And I have to apologize. My husband was supposed to be caring for my dogs and I'm stuck with them. So there may be a need that I can't anticipate. So I'm trying a different device today. So hopefully this will be more stable. If not, I can move, but I'm trying to manage both dogs and this meeting. So apologies in advance. I'm glad I didn't scare you away, but as you can see, this is kind of hard work. And these are conversations that are difficult to have. So we principally spoke about roofing at the last meeting. And I was wondering if anyone had any thoughts or questions with that before we moved on. Any great epiphanies that occurred after the meeting, or you feel like we kind of handled it?
Connie, You're on mute still.
Sorry. I think we handled it. We had extensive conversation about it, and that's my opinion.
Oh, and what I will say is that anything we talk about, I'm going to be giving you all a draft, and once you see it in print, you can say, oh my gosh, she didn't understand, or I can't believe she didn't write, or whatever it might be. So this is nothing about this is final. It's just to help me pull together the information in a way that's as close as possible to what you're ultimately looking for. Okay.
Dominic, just one quick question that occurred. We talked about rubber rolled roofing on a flat roof, or a porch or something of that nature.
Right.
Was that squared away? Did we make a decision? Was that appropriate?
Well, so here's my thoughts on that. I will have to go back to my notes and definitely check, but my thoughts on that is most of those flat roofs are not visible from the street, so you won't really care. So if it is visible, I think we should focus more on color of material than on the material itself, because the color is really going to dictate how you perceive it. So and just to give you a sense, for commercial buildings that have flat roofs or row house kind of buildings, I would actually recommend white roofs because they're more reflective of heat. And so it keeps the buildings a lot cooler in the summer. But because this is really a residential district, I think it really depends on the slope of the roof and how much you see or don't see. But if you stay in the darker grays / black, then you're pretty much going to be commensurate with other roofing materials, and it's going to be fairly invisible.
Good.
If
That was my only question. Did we or did we not agree on the rubber rolled roofing? It appears that we did.
I don't think it was finalized. I think I made assumptions. How's that?
All right.
But that's the way I would present it, is that, white roofs are wonderfully reflective. However, they draw attention to themselves. So in cases where they're not visible, you might want to consider a white roof. If they are visible, stick with the darker colors. Does that make sense?
Good.
Okay, so the next subject I was going to propose that we tackle is actually woodwork. And I'm pretty much just going through the agenda, as I had originally said to you back in July. In the woodwork section, I would suggest that we also incorporate information related to porches. So think about any of the wood elements to attach to buildings, with the exception of windows and doors. So anything that's wood, or should be wood, it may be aluminum siding or vinyl siding right now, but anything that's a wood-based material attached to the exterior of the building would be covered under this section. So if you feel like I'm missing anything, then raise your hand, so to speak. And we can choose to include fences as part of this, or we can include it separately as a different landscaping section, which is what I think makes more sense in most people's minds. Is that concurrence? I'm seeing some nodding heads. Okay, so anything related to fences, walls, walkways, outbuildings, all this sort of stuff will end up, sheds kind of thing, will end up in a different section. So the woodwork one is fairly simple. I like to begin by really describing the different types of siding and shingles. So one of the big problems we have in talking about architecture or preservation items with people who don't do it for a living is they don't know the vocabulary. So I like to kind of get that on the table. Do you mean clapboard siding, or there's something called novelty, or it's sometimes called German siding or drop siding, which are all the same thing. So vocabulary is also very regional. So talk about the different types of siding, but also talk about all the shingle shapes, because there's the square cut ones, the sort of fish scale ones, which are the round ones, and all the different shapes that we find in the district. And with your tolerance, I would suggest we include perhaps more shapes than are in your district in case you end up expanding out. Does that make sense to you? Okay, because I'm trying to think sort of past the immediate boundaries. So we may end up making recommendations on things that aren't necessarily very prevalent within the bounds of the district. So as part of the general discussion of woodwork, I also like to talk about kind of what causes wood to fail? You know, what are the issues related to failing? And it's usually all around water. Either you're not painting it from the outside, or you're covering it with aluminum siding or vinyl siding, and that's causing, you know, condensation to occur, or you're doing something on the inside where moisture is coming through the wall and it's causing wood problems. Because I think most people don't know how to critically look at their buildings. So provide a little bit of context around that. So where it starts to get tricky is the what happens if I have to do something on the outside of my building? And you know, you do have some folks who have vinyl aluminum siding on their buildings. So I'm assuming that that's not preferred. Is that right? Okay. So the preference is to remove vinyl or aluminum siding, and I would suggest ideally and restore wood siding, right? In whatever form or shape that takes. And let's focus on just siding now, nothing decorative. So are there any other possibilities to wood siding that you would consider? So some people, and I'm throwing out options here, I'm not throwing judgment. Some people would say that sort of cement board, hardy plank, it's also called cementitious board, is an okay alternative to siding. Is that something you all have evaluated, or you're not crazy about, or how are you feeling?
I don't have a problem with it. I think the bigger problem is when buildings are wrapped. I think that's a bigger problem.
Wrapped, you mean sort of vinyl sided?
Yes, when they're covering up whatever the original work is.
Okay.
Clapboard is replaced by a cementitious clapboard. I'm not necessarily against that.
Is that a consensus?
Well, my contention would be that the look remains similar. Not
Okay.
so much the material, you know, other than some outrageous material, but I'm more concerned with the look and would remain original.
Okay.
So I
I
go
am
along
as
with
well.
Jim. I don't mind that those other materials being utilized if they're similar in their features.
So if it's historically a clapboard kind of material, you want to see a clapboard kind of material, you would like to see similar exposure, which is the sort of dimension between the rows of the clapboard, and also to the extent possible, similar depths. So you're getting similar shadow lines. How did I do? Okay.
You got it. You read my
And-
mind.
Oh my goodness, it's just magical. It's like we've known each other forever.
Oh, my goodness.
So then the other question I would ask is, okay, and is this the same, whether it's the front of the building, the sides of the building, the rear of the building? You're okay in any of those locations? Yes? Okay. Is it the same if it's an outbuilding, a garage, a shed, or whatever? It's all fine?
Again, if the building was put there originally or it's been there for 50 or 100 years, yes, then I think it should remain as it was.
So the preference is to always maintain and retain the historic wood. If replacement is necessary, then hardy plank or a similar cementitious board material would be an alternate that would be considered. I didn't say approved, I said considered. Yes?
Yes.
Great, easy. Okay, so now I have corner boards and sort of the edges of those fields of clapboard. So it's the sort of base, the apron along the bottom of the building, the corner boards going up. Are we still saying hardy plank or some AZAC or some composite material is okay?
Yes, to me, yes.
I'm fine with all those materials as well.
Okay,
As long
and
as it maintains the look that was there, then it's fine.
okay.
If
And
it's a 2-inch corner board, you don't want to replace it with 8 or 12. If it's a 12-inch corner board, you don't want to replace it with 2. I think that's our general
Yep.
consensus.
and does that have to be painted or not?
Paintable.
A paintable surface that's dimensional. So that means it's not a vinyl, like vinyl siding is not dimensional. It's a thin sheet. I mean, this has 3 dimensions to it. And it's a paintable surface. So as long as it's those things, Can I just leave it white, the color it comes out of the box? Or do I have to be able to paint, or do I have to paint it on site? Even if I paint it white?
I don't think we should be controlling colors.
Yeah, I think we need.
I'm
to-
not controlling colors, I'm controlling the application of paint. And the reason I'm asking the question is that some of these materials have a bit of a sheen to them, and for them to look more appropriate and not a huge expense to a property owner, a coat of paint goes a long way.
I think it
So,
should be left to the homeowner.
Okay,
I agree. And, sometimes PVC, once you paint it, it looks great. Doesn't even look like PVC.
Mhm.
But then it's maintenance on the owner and, PVC, if you don't prep it just right, it starts to peel and then you have to go back out there and paint it. And it does become a maintenance issue for the homeowner.
And I recognize what Dominique is saying too, but it's one of the, it's just one of the things that we can say we're giving some lenience to, even though I don't like that we left unpainted. Right.
so I will speak my word of shame in that I put brand new aluminum clad windows in my house, and the sills are all AZAC, unpainted.
Mhm.
So because I chose one that didn't have a sheen that was different than my windows. So I made a real specific choice. So either way is fine. Okay.
Specify regarding the sheen, like whatever materials they use, that if they're not gonna paint, that it should be without a sheen.
Okay.
I think just if we said that it really needs to match the sort of color and I guess sheen or lack of sheen with whatever else is on the building, because if they're not replacing everything and they're only doing a section, you still want it to match what's there on the house. So you don't want something that's a flat base look and then you're going to put something that has a sheen. It really does need to look. So I think that's one of those things on a case by case basis where if they come to us and they say, we want to put this, can we put this, and we're only replacing a small section, then I think in that case, we should be able to say, well, we prefer that you paint it so that it has the flat look that matches the rest of the house, because if not, you're just going to have this section that's going to be shiny and it won't look right.
So why don't we leave it as a paintable finish, which suggests it must be painted without stating it must be painted? Does that work as language?
That works.
I would say so.
Okay.
I mean, because all this, we're going to tweak it anyway at the end. So
Absolutely.
we can see how it looks afterwards, but I think that's a good starting point for that.
The other question is wood grained or not wood grained? So some of these materials come wood grained. I will tell you that if you see in my opinion, if you see a painted piece of wood, it never looks wood grain. It always looks flat. So
If they're gonna paint it, then they should, it doesn't have to be wood grain, but if it's not gonna be painted, then you would have to have wood grain on it. Or if it's
I would suggest not.
not,
Yeah, so wood grain tends to pick up all dirt particulates, and then the grain becomes more and more pronounced because it's just holding dirt. And so particularly if they don't paint it, it's white holding dirt. So it looks a lot more pronounced.
The other issue also is that wood grain texture does not look wood grain texture.
I agree.
It's terrible. So I would go along with Dominique and say flat surface.
Okay, so now let's talk about trim. So this is the spindles, the cornices, the fancy stuff. What do y'all think? Not windows and doors, just all the other trim.
it has to be the appropriate size, shape, the era of the house. If it's not already there and they're adding it, it needs to be researched so that it fits the era of the home.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be wood if there is, like, I don't know, a resin composite equal that the diameter is appropriate. I think that that's okay.
So composite materials are generally accepted as long as they are dimensionally similar to what the historic material should have been. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
And if they're replacing things, like spindles or just something that's only a partial replacement, it needs to match what's already there. They can't put a different type of, so like a different shape, a different size, a different depth that has to match what's there.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions, concerns about wood? I'm sorry, I'm having a puppy freaking out because I think she needs to go out. I tried, but okay, I'll hold on a second. Any other questions about wood?
Is there any recommendations from you regarding it, like guidance?
Just cover it.
Well, you're not regulating paint color, which I think is really, really smart because I think people get angry about that unnecessarily. I would suggest that you recommend regular repainting as part of a maintenance program because that can actually save woodwork a lot longer as long as it, maintains a good coat of paint on it. Otherwise, I think it's fairly straightforward. You're being more lenient than many places, but I also think that will help you kind of expand and broaden your district. So, and this is an approach we can just take across the board. I apologize. I think I need a 2-minute excuse. You wouldn't mind if I can walk away for a minute.
Not at all.
She's not
Bio break.
giving up. Hold on.
Not at all.
Okay, Gemma.
Well, that's human.
Of course. I think it's a good thing to consider. I know she said a lot of places are a lot stricter than here, but I think we also need to keep in mind our residents and maybe an income level in this city that may not necessarily be the same as the income level in other cities where people have as much disposable income to really spend on renovations. So we do have to keep our demographics in mind when we're making these decisions. And I think that that's,
I think also educating at some point regarding, maintenance, like maintaining it actually saves you money in the
Right.
long run, preventing rot and that sort of thing. So maintenance is like really important.
yeah.
I don't know if you want to consider Sherwin-Williams has like a historical swatch of colors, depending on what era. If we can push people to use those colors or something along those lines, because
Yeah, like recommendations without actually guiding, without actually restricting them.
exactly.
I think we can always make recommendations anyway. I don't think there's anything that stops us from making the paint recommendations. But ultimately, we realize it's going to be their choice of color, I mean, I don't think
Sometimes
necessarily,
people
and
need guidance actually, like they don't know where to go. They don't know what color scheme. They
Right.
really want to do the right thing. They just not sure where to go.
I mean, there is always a chance that somebody may decide to paint the house hot pink. We won't be able to stop them, but there was the house on Rock Street, remember? Years back, it faded now, but it was like almost like a Pepto-Bismol pink further down Rock toward President Avenue. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah, we went
Yeah.
into it when it was
Yeah.
Oh, we did?
down here on the right, 2 blocks down on the right, right across from Larry.
Remember this.
I don't know. This was quite a while ago. This was years ago. I used to refer to it as the Pepto-Bismol house. But honestly, I didn't hate it. It just didn't look.
It does, like colors really don't, they're not as insulting as when people wrap a house,
Right.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes
It feels
that-
much better.
Good.
Okay, I apologize for that. So,
Right.
okay, did I miss anything? Do you want to go back to woodwork or are you good?
No, we're good.
We're good.
Okay.
Oh, actually, one thing, sorry, quickly.
Mhm.
Material acceptance. I know you said PVC, but like a boral, like alternate materials. Will that be mentioned in there?
I'm not familiar with Boral.
Okay. It's almost like a hybrid PVC, and they actually put wood in there, and it actually is, it's better, it's easier to paint, and it holds paint much better. I actually just used it on a project recently, and it was really a good product, and it's 100% rot resistant, water resistant, and
How do you spell it?
BORAL.
Okay. I will absolutely look into it. I'm not familiar with that, but what I do is not actually mention any product by name,
Okay.
because it is the potential for liability that none of us need.
Mhm.
Because if you specifically recommend, AZAC, and then 3 years from now, there's some lawsuit about AZAC, everyone could theoretically come back and say, what they told me I had to
Oh
use
no,
it.
yeah.
So I describe the product, but don't mention any manufacturer by name. Okay. Okay. Masonry and stucco is fairly easy. You have brick, you have stone, take care of it. If you see a bad crack, call somebody. Chimneys can fall under this, or but I generally prefer them with roofs, but they're kind of one of these in between things. So I really talk about what are the problems, what are the repair techniques, how do you deal with it? One of the questions that tends to come up is the use of I'll call them synthetic materials, sort of things like veneered bricks or cultured stones or split face block. So it's all the man-made stuff and how or when that's appropriate. Or even stone veneers that are really sort of that thin stuff that you could just automatically tell it's a thin stuff and not a real rock. So, any thoughts?
I think they should be used.
I agree. I don't like it. And
So real
they
brick
just-
is real brick.
Yep. And if
Yeah.
it's already there, if it's maintained, it should last forever.
Okay, so brick we would like to see maintained as brick. Stone should be maintained as stone. If I were building a new building, am I allowed to use a fake material or a man-made? Well, I shouldn't use fake. I don't want to be pejorative.
Well, we're dealing with historic structures here, so we wouldn't probably have to deal with a new construction.
I'm building a garage.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. Now you have to deal with it.
Right. I'm inclined to not control the foundation of new structures. I think that's already, I mean, if someone build whatever, a garage or a shed, and if it's within our purview, I think the structure itself would like to have some control that it complements the neighborhood, but I think the foundation itself, I'd rather stay away from, and I'd rather us not dictate that they make a cement form try to blend in.
Well,
Okay, I'm
I
building a
see.
concrete block garage.
right. So what I think is I don't want to see a concrete foundation. I don't want to see, man-made stuff like that. So if you're going to have a foundation that's going to have concrete, then I would want you to potentially cover it with lattice or straight boards or something along that line.
Okay, so let's start at I'll start at the worst and get better. So regular concrete block, it should be covered with something. It could be stucco as one alternative. And I'm masking, I'm not telling. It could be using some sort of, lattice or some sort of boards that cover it. Lattice tends to come and go. So meaning the next owner, once it blows off or something gets through it, the owner tosses it and never puts it back. So I wouldn't recommend lattice because I don't think that has the same staying power that you're looking for. But if you did some sort of a skirt board or something to cover it, I think that's different. But some of the man-made sort of cast stone look better than others. And I think you might want to consider those on a case-by-case basis, and depends on what the level of visibility is. You have a pretty good slope, so in the historic district, so one side of whatever that foundation is might be much taller than the other side of it, so you're going to end up seeing a lot more wall. So
Foundation could be short, but if it's a full basement foundation, we're gonna have over 3 feet of cement showing, so.
exactly. So I think what you do is you encourage historic materials such as stone and brick. And then you'll consider other materials based upon the overall design. And appropriateness to the main building, is that, or to the existing buildings in the immediate vicinity? How does that work?
I would like to be a little stronger than encouraged, and get them to modify their foundation. It's going to be almost physically impossible to get fieldstone and build a foundation these days. So undoubtedly, they're going to pour a foundation in concrete. However, there are so many, and as you just mentioned, Dominique, materials out there, and we should ask that they attempt to make the structure appear similar to the existing building that they're attaching to, or that's on the property with that addition. And again, I like the idea of leaving it open-ended because just think of this URL that Ruben just mentioned. New materials are coming out every day that are really good construction materials and can fit very well. So I'd like to be a little stronger than suggest, but I
Well, we could be adding encouraged. How does it encourage?
You're gonna
Well,
use
and
the shall?
How about
you should-
strongly recommend?
You can strongly recommend. What you can't do is shalls. And the reason you can't do is shalls is because this is not a regulatory document. This is a guide.
Mhm.
So you can strongly encourage anything you want. Does that work for you?
Sure, you recommend. Recommend is okay. Want to recommend this, recommend that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
this isn't the, be all end all for the historic district, because ultimately they still have to come before us if it's, because you're talking, these guidelines are also for any historic property. So we can't say, we require blah, 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 because a lot of these properties may not be in the district. We can require certain things within the district, and that's something that we determine when they come before us at one of the meetings.
So I will not use the word require in the guidelines, or I really don't recommend to use the word require, because there's always an out. You always need it, right? So the out is the school teacher who lives in this big house with all these kids, or the elderly person who's on the fixed income who can't afford to, or whatever it is, right? So you need the out. And so if you strongly encourage, but you consider the circumstance, it gives you the ability to say, well, in this case, no. And whatever those circumstances end up being. And in this case, no, maybe, it's really not that visible from the street. So given that they want to do this over here, but we're getting this other thing over there, then that's a good trade-off, and we'll happily live with that. So the word require in guidelines is generally only used if the local municipality adopts the guidelines as part of the code. And I don't think that's going to happen here. So if that's not going to happen, I don't want to get you all in trouble with people about requiring either. Okay? So the word require in guidelines is generally only used if the local
I think that's Joyce's thing in the background that's playing that we can hear. because
Okay.
she's watching it live. She's not actually talking.
Okay.
We can hear her TV. That's what you're hearing.
So, so in terms of masonry, I really like to focus on telling people how to kind of keep their old masonry up and, you know, functional, and make sure they repoint it with the right mortar. And you will, I don't think, get into actually evaluating types of mortar and all that, correct?
On occasion.
On occasion, as part of a larger project, or for all projects?
As part of a larger product, I do some historical rehab depending on, you know, where I get placed to manage. So I'm familiar with repointing and historically accurate ways to repoint and the correct mortar color, etc. But when it comes to residential homes, it's a different story.
No, but you're not going to regulate that, are you? Some municipalities actually regulate mortar mixes. Okay. And how about cleaning, masonry cleaning? Do you regulate that or no?
No.
Okay, this is not judgmental. I'm just trying to make sure I get the scope of what you do clear. What I will do is provide some general information about that, because there are good ways to do it and bad ways to do it, and certainly good times of year to do it and bad times of year to do it, particularly in Massachusetts. So I can give the parameters for what that is, which will hopefully guide property owners and not necessarily rely on the contractor as two guys free next week in the middle of January.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. Yes,
Okay.
I like that.
Okay.
I don't know if the others do, but I like that.
I do too.
Jim's smiling in the back. I think he likes it too.
You did a thumbs up.
Yeah, he gave thumbs up, so yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Okay, one of my most controversial subjects is windows. So windows. How do you all feel about windows?
As accurate as they can be.
Okay.
Repair them only if they're in absolute disrepair, which I've yet to see one in complete disrepair, but they need to be repaired. And then, are you talking about storm?
I'm talking about in general. So I have literally written the absolute extremes. Thou shalt keep every historic wood window and make it wood, and it shall be. And even if you can tangentially see it at the back of the side of the whatever of the house, or you know, keep wood windows towards the front of the property at the front elevation, and we'll give flexibility around the sides, or we're willing to accept these alternatives. So,
Like Ruben said, you know, to make them as they need to match what was there.
Yeah, the scary part about replacing windows is that they're not usually replaced in
Size.
kind. You know, you lose the dimension, you lose style, you lose the actual light, and so that's the scary thing. So once you say, okay, you don't have to keep your wood window, they're going to replace the window, and maybe somebody will replace it with something like really cool and appropriate. But it seems like what we mostly see is a window insert put in that makes the window smaller, and it's white vinyl, and it may or may not be paintable, and it's difficult.
That's the same thing as changing the dimensions on whether it's porch rails or, you know, clapboard size.
And so the thing is I think, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted, but I think the point is, I know that you can replace a window and do it well, but I don't know how to word that. I think the ones that say replace a window is okay, I don't know how to word that.
so let me give you all a little bit of information. Wood windows that are 100 years old are more likely to last another 20 years than a brand new wood window that you buy from Peller or Anderson today. Okay, the wood's different. I mean, that's just the reality. So you're dealing with old growth lumber, typically. Well, my region, it's yellow pine, but the quality of the wood was much better than it is today, because they're basically chopping down trees that are young, and they tend to warp and shrink, and gaps open, and water gets in them, and they rot. So I would think about whether it's appropriate to say that wood windows must be replaced with wood windows, given the cost associated with replacing windows and the relative short time frame. So I think first and foremost, save your historic wood windows as long as you possibly can. And then there becomes a discussion about how can you weatherize them better, and do you or do you not approve of storm windows? And most places will err on the side of, if you can save the historic window, we'll take the storm window because the historic window is still there, but each place is different. So I'm not adding judgment, I'm just giving you, balance. So if I'm going to replace the window, you can require that they replace with wood, but you also have to accept the fact that this is extraordinarily costly as a life cycle cost if you're doing this every 20 years or so. There are alternatives. One of the alternatives is aluminum clad wood windows. So it's a wood window that the outside of it is literally aluminum, and you can have the mutton grid on the outside, so it looks, and double glazing, so it looks like a wood window, more like a wood window from the outside than many of the other alternate materials. It is not paintable, so they have to select the color and live with it. They're available in a much wider range of colors now, so that's less problematic. But it is very difficult to paint after it's been installed. So you get a much longer lifespan. They are more expensive than a wood window, but they'll last significantly longer, and they have less maintenance associated with them, which is generally a plus because people don't do maintenance on their houses. So then you get into sort of the composite materials. So it's not the thin kind of vinyl sheet kind of windows, but the things that have dimension. I'm trying to think of, I think it's Anderson that makes one. Renewal by Anderson is the brand. So it's actually a 3-dimensional sort of a PVC kind of product that's better than your stock vinyl window. And then sort of down the scale is the vinyl window. So that's the basic range for residential construction. And you can also get into things like metal windows, but they tend to be used on commercial installations. Ruben, did I cover it?
Very well. Yeah. When it comes to the simulated divided light, exterior grills applied, yes. I don't think we need to force people to do an interior applied grill if that's the case, if they, do go with an aluminum clad window. I think, like Dominique said, having the option to do a historically appropriate window on the sides or back of the house, I think should be acceptable.
Yeah, I agree.
So one thing that some municipalities have done is if, for example, one of your windows on the front elevation, for whatever reason, is quote unquote beyond repair. And I'm with Connie. I've never really seen a window I can't fix. It's a question of how much money and can I find somebody who knows how to do it. But if you have a window at the front that's beyond repair and you have to replace it, one option is to suggest that they relocate a window from the back of the building to the front and then put a replacement window in the back. And that's a way to kind of balance it that doesn't cause as much angst, I'll say, for the property owner in terms of replication and cost. So it may be that you say, the front half of the house, meaning the windows as you're approaching the street, because we have to keep in mind that inside the person's house, windows happen on usually 2 sides of a corner room, right? So they don't necessarily want the windows at the front being different than the windows on the side.
Yeah.
Are we headed in the right direction?
I think so.
One question I have is jump frame replacement versus a full frame tear out. Like earlier, we mentioned that you lose these sight lines on these windows. Can we kind of incorporate that into this as well? We hate to see these windows lose 3 inches on the width and height when they go to replace them.
So, yeah, so there are different kinds of replacements. This is a good point. So there are different kinds of replacement, I'll say packages, okay, because they come sort of pre-packaged. One is it's just a sash replacement. So they literally replace the sash. They will put jam liners in the side and you keep your historic trim basically intact. So that's one option. And then another option is the insert. So it goes inside an existing frame and yes, the lights get smaller. So it's designed to sort of fit in the slot, the trim gets wider, the glazing gets smaller. The third option is you remove the entire frame from the house and then you build one to fit. So the preferred is either do a sash replacement and keep all the existing wood trim in place. And then if that is not an option, then you can do the, take the whole thing out and put a new package in. Does that make sense to maintain the daylight openings? Yeah.
It does. It just brings us down a tricky road.
Well, these are all guides, and this is why you talk about it in the sort of general sense, and you say, you know, it is really, you know, you as homeowners might benefit more from maintaining your daylight, and if that's the case, you're either going with a sash replacement or you're going with this full replacement. You don't have to specifically say remove historic fabric.
Right.
Right.
Yep. That's a perfect way to word it. There you go.
I'm reading your mind too. All right, so it was so sash, and then the second option would be frame, and we're maintaining daylight. Okay, so tell me how we feel about storm windows.
I like stone window.
Whoops. Okay, I think my husband's home.
In general, I like storm windows because I think that by allowing them, it actually encourages people, it shows people that, you know, they keep the original windows. If people think that they can't have stone windows, then that's one more reason they're gonna feel like, oh, these old wooden windows just aren't efficient. They know they can put a stone window on. I think that makes that help the solutions, one of the solutions.
Is that a consensus?
I think it protects the window.
Yeah.
Okay,
Does.
so there are different kinds of storm windows, different kinds of everything. So old school storm windows are actually wood. Nobody wants to deal with them because they don't want to be hanging out on the ladder trying to lift them and put them in place. You can get fixed storm windows, pane of glass or plexiglass that again are put on the outside. The most convenient, most prevalent type is triple tracks, which are the ones which usually have a storm top and bottom and then a single screen, and then you switch out the storming screen. And generally, I would recommend that the meeting rail of the storm match the meeting rail of the window height. So you want that horizontal line in the same place. And that the color of the storm match the color of the sash. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
like that.
Okay, and color. All right. Okay, doors. Doors are easier. Thankfully.
Now there are, Dominique, there are basically two styles of storm windows, and again, you got to address it with the window, but some storm windows will fit on the trim.
Mhm.
Others will fit and recess into your window a bit. So one is less conspicuous than the other, and one tends to blend in more with the building.
And what would you like?
Well, we should, I would like to at least give that recessed storm window some honorable mention.
Yeah.
In that it might be a recommendation to, you know, just to enhance the installation. I mean,
Okay.
and it's not any more costly.
Okay, and I can think of some beautiful way to word it later. How's that?
You're wonderful. You are marvelous.
Okay, so doors are relatively simple. Most people actually hold on to their front doors. They don't really muck around with them too much. So it usually comes down to a storm for a front door. And my experience is the best storms are the ones with the most glass, because you see the door to the greatest extent. And anything that muck around with them too much, and anything that is not glass should hopefully match the color of the door, similar in the way of storm windows. Does that make sense?
Yes.
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 Okay, so storm windows or storm doors can be made of aluminum. They're often made of wood. Do you have a preference? Most people are more accommodating to the concept of a wood storm door because it's something they touch. So the tactile nature of it makes them less resistant to using wood. But you could also just put it out as an option and say, if you get a wood storm door, you can paint it to match your front door. You don't have to actually say which one you prefer.
I don't have a strong preference, but I personally prefer a wood door. It just feels stronger when you touch it.
Mhm.
Some of the aluminum doors, especially the size of historic doors, they tend to not feel very strong, and
Mhm.
that's
I think-
that's just my opinion.
I think sometimes too, the aluminum ones tend to look just a little flimsier. Like just the look of it doesn't have the richness or that authentic look that a wood one would. So I think in the case of strictly the district, not so much outside of the district, but in the district, I think that would be one of those things that we would have to look at.
Mhm.
What's that?
Doors are very important when you're looking at a house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd almost prefer to say no storms on doors, but I think that's pushing it. So then I feel like if I'm not going to regulate that, I just rather not have an opinion. I do like Dominique's idea that the more glass in it, the better. That way, because a lot of the doors, if they're original, are beautiful in themselves. They're part of the architecture.
Well, and also stylistically, you don't want to put something with a lot of gingerbread on it for, a house that more colonial in nature, right? You want to keep them stylistically consistent.
Mhm.
The other issue. Garage doors. You thought I wouldn't think of another kind of door, didn't you? Any thoughts?
Well, there are some garage doors that really, when you're sitting back and looking, even if it's an electrically operated solid door, has that barn door effect, barn door look. So there are a number of options out there.
So this is one of those again that I find to be a little bit tricky, because some garages look like they were built in 1950, right? And that's just the nature of that style of building. But others have more of a carriage house impression, for lack of a better way of putting it. So I think it's really stylistically keyed, so that you want those two things to match. And sometimes a garage door that is just, I'll say, a paneled door just visually goes away. You just don't see it. It's when you start adding little tiny windows and decorative elements to it that you start to notice it. How about materially, meaning whether it's an aluminum door versus a wood door? or steel door. I mean, I'll say metal versus wood. And the answer could be no preference at all.
I'd say no preference. A wood garage door, they tend to be a lot more money than a steel.
Yeah, they're just heavier and even heavier to operate. So the garage doors should be stylistically consistent with the buildings.
Correct.
Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So any more questions regarding windows and doors?
Transoms and stained glass.
My feeling is maintain them as long as possible. So the one thing about windows, and this is just me giving you information, I don't know if it's something we specifically need to cover in the guidelines, is particularly when you get into additions or new constructions and dormer windows. So this is a real specific little niche. Because of fire codes, you usually can't have a well-proportioned window. Those windows tend to be smaller on a house when you go up to the upper stories. But because of fire code, you have to be able to get a fireman and all his gear in through the window to protect, to grab your kid. You can't necessarily have an appropriately proportioned window for historic concerns. So one of the things that the window manufacturers have started doing is actually making a window that looks like a double hung window that the whole window opens up. It's a casement that looks like a double hung window, basically, which lets you get the kid out with all the gear intact. So those sorts of windows, to the extent possible, you don't necessarily want on the front elevation. It's still different. It's just better than the alternative, so to speak. So those sorts of windows, you're not going to want on the front elevation. That may be a little too specific for what you need in terms of these guidelines. But I just wanted to put the bug in your ear about it. So if you end up getting the person sort of screaming that we need to have this, there are alternatives. You can put it on a side elevation or on a rear elevation. Just don't make your dormers so oversized they look ridiculous. It's just a hint. Okay, guys, well, it is 7 o'clock. We could quickly talk about the site stuff if you want, or we could hold that.
Excuse me, Dominique,
Sure.
could I just
Yep.
mention, we have a lot of basement windows in our homes here. Most of our homes have full basements. And basement windows in most of the homes are conspicuous from the street. Do we want to talk about what we do with windows if they have to be changed, or there are times when people will put in glass block?
That's a very good point. And yes, we should address that. So I'm assuming that glass block is not preferred.
No.
Right.
Well, I gotta ask. Okay, if I am concerned about security at my basement window, am I allowed to put in metal bars?
Well, you can
Right.
put them on the inside. They do not necessarily have to go outside. So.
So
you
why
just-
are people, let me ask the question differently. Why are people installing glass block?
What happens quite often is the transom will rot because they're loaded to ground, and trying to replace the frame becomes a problem or expensive. And they're not really using them for, anything but a little bit of light. They're not using them for ventilation. So they'll close them in. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be closed in with block. There are other types of closures that people are putting on their basement windows. So.
So in the case of basement windows, understanding that they are more likely to rot, would you accept an alternate material?
No, I would want to keep the integrity of that existing window.
Okay, so my window has totally rotted. The frame is filled with termites. What am I gonna do? Or, just rotted if it's a hole in the window.
I think you can use alternative materials as we discussed before.
Sure.
But as long as it's paintable, so it can be painted to match the house, so it blends in.
So we talked about aluminum clad windows. They are not paintable.
Oh, I thought they came in color.
They come in color, but you chose the color out of the catalog and they come that way. You do not paint them when they arrive.
Right. But I mean, they're in color, right? So you can get a color to either match your home or complement the home.
Yeah, you can get a color to complement your home. Getting a custom match is really expensive. And
Or
for
you could stick to a black, which always complements any home.
So you can stick to a black, you could certainly go with a white, which is again another neutral choice. They also have other colors, but if one is replacing just their basement windows because they're the only windows that have rotted out, you don't necessarily want them to be a different color. And maybe in the case of the basement windows, because they're in a foundation, black is the best answer.
I think so.
And that's what I don't want to get into defining colors in this at all. I just want to make it clear that aluminum clad windows are not paintable.
Would we allow someone to remove whatever is bad in there, including the window, and maybe replace that with some sort of an aluminum storm window? Solo, just replace the frame and put a storm window on there? Is that acceptable? Or would that be acceptable to the group?
It's really poor security, and I'm not suggesting that you're in a crime-ridden zone, but storm windows you can literally kick out really easily. I just don't imagine people would feel safe with
Again, you could put the bars on the inside for security features. I'm talking looking at the window from the outside. Getting something that'll blend with the style of the house, but not cost you a lot of money.
I think if you're talking about windowsills rotting and being, having the ant problem or whatever, removing that part of the window and replacing the bottom of the window. I wasn't really thinking about them removing the entire window, but just the part that's rotted.
So the
I'm
other
just-
answer, the other way to put this, just to make it easier, is we can just say that all windows, including basement windows, are subject to the same criteria, right? So we'll list the criteria. And if they have a very particular circumstance at their basement window that makes it relatively unique, then you handle it as a one-off kind of application and you deal with their circumstances. And if they have, a few basement windows and the ones towards the back of the building are better than the ones at the front of the building, have them move those to the front, and then you can talk about what happens on the side. So it's a similar kind of philosophical approach that you can deal with the specific circumstances.
Disaster. And when a similar situation happened in 2018, neighbors complained their safety was at risk. And that got the ball rolling for the town.
Excuse me, Patrick, can you mute yourself, please?
Sorry, I thought I was. Hang on.
So that's another way to approach it, because it sounds like what you're really asking is to make sure the basement windows get treated in the same manner that the rest of the windows on the house get treated. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then we'll make that statement, and then that will kind of address it as an issue.
And Connie thinks that the sill is really bad, then we'll use a quarter bondo instead of a pint.
That was my idea.
All right. Okay, guys, is there anything else on windows or doors or woodwork or masonry? See, we covered 3 sections today. That's great.
Sure is.
One thing I want to mention is fiberglass windows are getting a little bit more popular, and they tend to have exteriors that you can paint.
Mhm.
Would that be able to be included in there, do you think?
That's up to you guys. I mean, I think here's what I would suggest is you kind of establish criteria, right? But you don't necessarily go naming products to the extent you can avoid it. So the criteria are that you have to maintain the configuration of the windows, and it has to have the same daylight opening, right? Those are two things I've heard you say. And so the configuration, the operation is the double hung. And I'll just use that as an example. The configuration says it's a 6/6 window. So you have to have 6/6. You want the muttons on the exterior of the window. If you have mullions, meaning like a pair of windows next to each other, the mullion is that center vertical bar. You want to keep the mullion also, as part of that configuration. And you can choose either a paintable surface to achieve that. Paintable is wood and sort of like a fiberglass option, or you can use a pre-painted option such as the aluminum clad windows. But putting it in that way allows the flexibility of the next greatest material that comes up to be considered by you and not excluded, right? Okay. So we'll write it in a way that establishes the basis for the decision-making process that will allow you flexibility into your future.
I agree. I just didn't know how specific you were going to get. So you're going to leave it broad, paintable versus or pre-finished surface, and go with that. Right.
I would suggest keeping it as broad enough, but establishing the criteria, which are daylight openings, as well as exterior profiled muttons.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Loud and clear. Gotcha.
Okay. Okay. Did we cover windows and doors? I think so.
This is Joyce on the phone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry that I have to leave the meeting at this point. I'm trying my best to get back into action, but I really need to get back to some of the responsibilities I have at home at the moment. So please excuse me, and I'll be signing out here at 7:10.
Okay, thank you, Joyce.
Okay.
Thank you for the information. It's been very informative, but as Kristen knows, I have some responsibilities here at home.
Yeah,
so
that's
thank
fine.
you guys, and I'll look forward to next week.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so let's then wrap up for this evening. So for next week's homework, I'm giving you all homework. What we're going to talk about is site elements, and site elements can be defined as fences, walls, if you would like curbs, and I have to go back to your ordinance and see how tall something is before you review it. Some people review paving and some people don't, and paving might include a walkway, but you can do whatever you want at your driveway. So, we'll figure out what those nuances are. As well as some people put in this section kind of small structures like sheds and things, as well as placement of utilities. Think about air conditioner units, generators, sort of propane tanks, that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily a huge section, but it really just kind of sets the stage, so to speak. And in the case of Fall River, I would also want to talk about the fact that it's, there's some very nice sized trees that you would want people to keep, and that this is a sloped community so that you get higher visibility from different angles if you're low versus high, etc. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about additions, new construction, and demolition. So that's sort of a tricky nut to talk about, because it's really, in your current historic district, you're really speaking more about either additions to existing buildings or potentially outbuildings on existing sites. You don't have a lot of empty sites, but you do have some properties that have buildings that may not be contributing, that if somebody said, I want to demolish and build a new building here, that you might have to consider what that could look like, or what the parameters are for those decisions. So additionally, as you expand, this district or into another district, you're going to have to deal with it. So we'll talk about kind of the general concepts as to what that means. So one of the other sections we can talk about, although admittedly I didn't take any photographs about it, was really dealing with commercial structures. And that is a question as to whether or not ultimately you would like to regulate commercial properties. And I don't know what to tell you because it may be one of those things that if you choose to do that in the future, it's a real easy chapter to do as an add-on, because you're really at that point, you're talking about things like signage and awnings and commercial storefronts and sort of the particulars of commercial stuff. So the buildings, the building materials, the building discussions are all really consistent with everything else we'll be talking about. It's just the commerce part of it becomes different.
Is that part of our program now, or would that have to be an addition?
Well, it's up to you. I don't have the basis for doing it, meaning I don't have the photographs and things. You all could send me photos and I could certainly write it. Or if I have to make another trip up to do that, we could do it, but it would have to be specific to a historic district. It's hard to fake. So particularly when it's commercial buildings, because you're taking photos of signs and things that everybody knows where it is. And if you're not regulating it, and you're talking about it, then I think that's a problem.
There are general questions regarding things like awnings, lighting, that have come up in the past.
Signage,
That's
definitely.
another one.
So we can deal with, so lighting is something I typically deal with in the site elements section, because we're really talking generally about dark skies and lighting pathways, and not just sort of throwing light into the air and choosing a historically appropriate lighting. So that's something I could deal with in that realm.
Okay.
Awnings in terms of covering windows, I consider that temporary, and I don't know how permanent you want to talk about it. I don't recall seeing any awnings when I was up there, but that may have just been where I was seasonally. Some places accept awnings, and it's largely on sustainability, on a sustainability basis, because you can reduce the temperature in the summer with an awning on a building. So some municipalities have said they're fine, or they're fine, they have to be a solid color, so that on something stripy that draws too much attention. So that's again up to you, and we could do it really in a statement that says awnings are subject to review by the commission, and if you want to propose it, show it to us.
Coronavirus has extended restaurant dining to the outdoors, and we have seen, not a lot, but there are, not so much in Fall River, but what they'll do is they have awnings, but it's the either electrically or manual awnings that we saw 50 years ago, where you would crank them down and then put them away at night or when it's shaded. So if maybe just addressing that in a sort of a blanket statement might work. Give us some context to work with.
Well, here's what my suggestion is: don't deal with commercial buildings at this moment in time, because you're not regulating any. And if you start regulating them, I would say add a chapter to your guidelines to regulate commercial buildings. I think it's really, really hard to write it when you're not doing any regulation of it. I mean, you currently have, for example, the school in the historic district, which has a sign out front. So you can talk about signage in that sort of very small scale sense, but I think it's hard to do it in a really big sense.
But if we have people who own commercial properties that are looking for guidance as far as a historic building that they have, shouldn't we have something at least available for them to access. I mean, even though we're not technically regulating it now, it doesn't mean that in the future, we're not gonna have a district, a local district that includes some commercial properties, but just the idea that we're doing these guidelines, yes, because we need something for the district specifically for our regulations, but also for any property owners in the city to use when they are going to be renovating a property, because a lot of people come before us and they just have questions.
If you send me some photographs, I can give you some instructions. You could send me some photos and I can try and cobble something together. I just didn't spend as much time looking at commercial buildings as I would have needed to do a good job.
Dominique, is there anything sort of standard? Because an awning is an awning is an awning. So there must be some standards of height, distance, so how we're going to support the structure. That would be one. Lighting, are they pendants? Are they gooseneck fixtures? Are we utilizing LEDs? Do we control the lighting level in the daytime versus the evening? Those must be standards out there that you probably have addressed 100 times over. So
well, at least 10. So here's what I will do is I'm going to I will distribute it to you guys. I'll send it through Kristen so she can distribute to you all a couple of different versions of this I wrote, and you can poke at it and see kind of what makes sense to you, what you think is applicable and not applicable, and then we can start from there. So that's probably the best guidance I could give you at this point. And then what I'll be asking you to do is run around town and take photographs of signage or awnings or things that you think are successful, things that you want others to emulate. And I'll have to rely on you all to be my photographers.
okay, that sounds like a fair enough deal.
Okay, so I will get those off to Kristen tomorrow when I'm in my office, so you guys can have a look. And so for the next meeting, we're going to be looking at, let me go back to this again. So the site elements, which should be relatively quick, we'll do a little bit about commercial properties, and then I'll give you your homework assignments. Then you can fight about who can take the best picture of the sign. And then the additions, new construction and demo. And we're going to take a stab at the introduction, which is difficult. I will talk to you about your process and how you review things. So it's really about how you currently do things, and we'll compare that, or I'll compare that against your ordinance and how it says you should be doing things, because you'd be surprised how often those two things are different. So thank you all. And if you have no more questions, we can meet again next week at 6:30 or 6 o'clock next week.
6 o'clock. Sounds like a plan. Thank you again.
All right.
Have a good week.
Thanks,
You
Dominique.
too. Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Have a good week.
Rick, we're not
Rick,
done.
you better stay on.
Rick, we have a whole rest of the agenda.
Oh, my goodness, you would have to do that.
Sorry,
You're into my wine time.
sorry. Your wine time's gonna have to extend to a little later. Okay, so, moving on. 4B is the merger of the Historical Commission, the Historic District Commission. So I did reach out to Attorney Rumsey's office, and he is not in all week. Somebody did say they were gonna get back to me because I had sent that out weeks ago and haven't heard anything yet on the merger, so I don't know where it's at. So I did call to do a follow-up, but he's not there, and no one has gotten back to me yet. So hopefully by next Monday, I will have more news on that.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
How long has that been going on, Chris? That's like almost 2 years, right?
The merger, I believe it's probably Is it over 2 years?
If not, it's close to.
I believe it might be over 2 years at this point. Yeah, I think it was 2 years in the spring.
I think I'll have to make some phone calls tomorrow and rattle some cages since I'm still in town.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's with Attorney Rumsey, and until he gets the thing.
I think it was
Together
stalled
and
for a
sent-
long time with the previous mayor and.
That's what it was. That's what it was. Actually, I mean, Attorney Rumsey has definitely gone much further with it than the previous administration, so we can't fully fault him there. It was stalled long before that, so
All right, thank you.
thank you. Let's see, okay. So 5, notice of intent to demolish. So we did receive a letter regarding 45 Morgan Street, and the letter came from the City of Fall River Building Inspector Glenn Hathaway. So as I'm sure you all know, 45 Morgan Street was demolished. It is now a pile of rubble. And I am going to read you the letter that was sent. And this was the one that was sent by the building inspector. So July 27th, 2021, it was sent to Morgan Street Realty LLC, 408 South Main Street, Fall River, Mass. To whom it may concern, due to the current conditions of the building located at 45 Morgan Street, former NB Borden School, I am requiring that you demolish the building immediately. My decision for urgency is based on potential imminent danger to first responders and the general public. My decision is based on the Massachusetts State Building Code 9th edition 2015, 780 CMR IBC, Section 116, unsafe structures and equipment, along with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 143, Section 6-7. It is my understanding that the proper documents from the Historical Commission cannot be obtained because you did not follow rules governed by Fall River City Ordinance, Section 38-111, notice required. After careful review, it is my belief that with it being located in a heavily populated neighborhood, and even if the ordinance was followed, allowing for an additional 6-month delay, the outcome of this building would remain the same. It would be demolished. Regards, Glenn Hathaway, Director of Code Enforcement, City of Fall River. And that was sent also to his attorney, Matthew Burke, the Historical Commission, Timothy McCoy, the City Administrator, and Fire Chief John Lynch.
Was he fined for not following?
He was not. There were no fines given to him at all. He was told, I guess, months prior that the building had to be secured, that the windows had to be secured, and they were not. Anybody that drove by could see the windows had never been secured. And no, he was not held accountable. He was not fined for anything. And then ultimately the building was told, he was told the building would have to be demolished. And I do understand the safety concerns that the building inspector had. However, had the property owner been fined, had there been some sort of,
I think just following city protocol, like if you don't pull a permit appropriately, you are fined. And I don't know why he was given, pretty much he was able to do whatever he wanted to do without following any city.
right, without consequences. Basically, he was allowed to do everything without consequences, even to the extent, I understand what Mr. Hathaway said about the 6-month delay, if he was given another 6-month delay, he didn't think that the outcome would be any different because the building would still ultimately be demolished. However, in those 6 months, there could have been a little more of an inquiry into where the missing paperwork went for the purchase and sale agreement to find out if the terms of the purchase and sale agreement were followed, and if there was something in that agreement, there possibly could have been a reason to stop the demolition of the building. But that was not allowed to happen. We were not allowed to have our say publicly because, again, Councilor Pelletier did not allow us to speak publicly at the real estate committee meeting when Mr. Santos just decided he was not going to show up at that meeting either, and then was allowed to get away with that as well, and was allowed never to have to face any kind of public responsibility other than Councilor Pelletier wrote a letter basically absolving him of any real answering to us or the public and the public. So basically, a city building was bought for a song to turn into a parking lot, and the city lost out, and the taxpayers lost out, certainly. And yeah, there is no consequence for what he did, and that makes me furious that there really are no consequences yet. I mean, a homeowner will incur monetary consequences for little infractions of things, and this developer, this person has absolutely no monetary consequence whatsoever for destroying a building that was on the National Historic Register. So I don't know what else to say to that, but I am very, very upset at this whole situation.
I can give you that answer, but you'll get mad if I say it.
By all
He's just-
means, share your thoughts.
He's supporting the mayor. That's the bottom line. He's a politician. He supported the mayor. And there's no consequences. He'll get a slap on the wrist and say, "Don't do it again," and they'll sell him another building, and he'll do it again.
But even the building, when it was sold, it had nothing to do with the current administration. This was sold years before.
Yeah, but he could have been fined for his failure to comply with the ordinance. But
I have to agree with Patrick. I mean, I think he's right.
it's re-election season.
Yes, it
I
is.
can't afford to lose the votes.
Well, by that case, there might be a lot of other votes lost for one decision.
I hope so.
I don't know.
I sure hope so. I mean, if you guys violate the open meeting law, I hold you guys to your feet to the fire. I will call Mr. Hathaway tomorrow and tell him what I think.
Mute yourself for a few minutes at some point.
Well, I actually did have a conversation with Mr. Hathaway, and I did say that I was very disappointed that
Fine.
that there were no consequences for him. And that's basically what it comes down to. Basically what just happened was the city just said, "Oh, sure, you can take any of our properties, buy them for a song, bilk the city out of all kinds of money, and tear it down so you can have yourself
And hide the
nice
paperwork. And hide the paperwork.
and hide the paperwork, and you can have yourself a nice parking lot."
Comes
So-
back to that old song. They paved paradise and put up a parking lot.
What's worse is the building was brought into disrepair by the current owner.
agree.
Exactly.
Yeah, if my memory serves me right, he spent money to make it watertight so that he could convert it into his original promise, which was housing. And then all of a sudden, there was urgency for him to tear it down. I'm sure he was happy to do that.
Well, the thing is, he made a claim that he spent over $100,000 to do repairs to that building. And yet, when I checked with the building and the building department, there has never been one permit pulled from 2014 for any work that was done on that building. So there is actually no proof that he did any work, because, I mean, we have not seen any paperwork that showed that he did any work on that building, and certainly the building department does not have paperwork showing that he intended to do any work or ever pulled any permits. So again, you know,
I'm sure he spent $100,000 cash money with no receipts, no paper trail. Yeah, right.
but even if he did without a paper trail, there were no building permits that were.
I agree with you,
That right there is a complete violation of city ordinance, and
but it's not what you know, it's who you know.
I know. But at least
Be
the
careful, you'll be
restaurant looks
replaced.
really nice on the outside now.
Hey, the tenants of the Fall River Housing Authority parking, apartment building next door is gonna love being able to have some parking.
Which they won't be able to access, I'm sure. We'll see. He said it would help the area, it would help people in the area with parking, and we'll
Yeah.
see if that actually happens.
I'll take that bet. That it doesn't happen.
So I don't know if anybody has anything else to say, but I think you all know how I feel about this.
And Leo was the one who let him get away with it?
Yes.
I'll call Leo.
He sent a letter to us stating that he spoke personally. This was after we were not allowed to speak at that real estate committee meeting publicly, because we were there, the historical commission was there, and the preservation society was there. And we wanted to speak about the issues of that we had with, like, missing paperwork, the fact that permits were not, all of these things that were not yet made public. And we wanted to speak about those at the real estate committee meeting. And Councilor Pelletier told us that we weren't going to be allowed to speak because he was not there to answer to any of those allegations and defend himself. So we had to wait until the next meeting until he was there.
And of course, she didn't show up at that meeting either, right?
No, what happened was, after that, we got a letter a few weeks later from Councilor Pelletier stating that he personally had spoken with Mr. Santos, and that he was convinced that Mr. Santos had exhausted every effort to try and get funding to refurbish this building into what it was originally intended to, but that it was just beyond his reach financially. It was never going to work. And of course, we knew that was not true, because never once did he even attempt to get historic tax credits for that building, which would have given him, 30% tax credits. Plus, there are other programs that would have made that possible for even more funding. So just the fact right there, we know, was an absolute blatant lie, because he did not exhaust every effort to do that, because we knew of other efforts that could have been made. He did not. So Councilor Pelletier, yes, he is completely complicit in the fact that this building came down.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, anything else about 45 Morgan Street? Okay, moving on. 317 Hanover Street. So I did receive a letter. I'm going to read that. Hold on 1 minute. Let me get
Attorney
that.
Burke, is he the same attorney? I know that he represented the NB boarding school. But is he
Matthew.
also is Matthew Burke also the city attorney who represents the Board of Assessors? Or is that a different attorney?
I don't know. I know that Matt Burke, besides representing Morgan Street, is also representing this other one that I'm about to read right now.
Okay.
I just need to pull that up. Right. Nope, that's not it. Just give me 1 second here. So anyway, we did receive a letter regarding 3 properties, and it is 305 and 309 and 317 Hanover Street. Okay, right here. So the letter is dated July 27th, 2021. Notice of intent to demolish 317 Hanover Street. So it's addressed to the Historical Commission. Dear Chairperson Olivera, I write you in reference to 317 Hanover Street, Fall River, Mass, map 17, lot 32. I represent South Coast Hospitals Group Incorporated, who has entered into a purchase and sale agreement to purchase this property along with 305 Hanover Street, map 17, lot 62, and 309 Hanover Street, map 17, lot 33. It is the intention of my client to demolish all 3 of these buildings and will be applying for a demolition permit for all 3 properties. I have been informed, excuse me, that 317 Hanover Street has been designated as a historical structure. So therefore, please let this letter serve as notice of our intent to demolish. If the board has any questions or concerns, do not hesitate to reach out to my office at any time. Very truly yours, Matthew F. Burke Jr., Law Offices of Burke, Espinola, and Van Colen. So I did receive that, and I did write a letter in response, and the letter is being sent to him registered mail. So the letter is, Dear Attorney Burke, the Fall River Historical Commission acknowledges receipt on July 27th, 2021 of your request to demolish the buildings located at 305, 309, and 317 Hanover Street in Fall River. Because the property at 317 Hanover is listed in the Fall River Register of Significant Structures, there is an automatic 6-month demolition delay. This delay will be in effect until January 27th, 2022. The Fall River Historical Commission respectfully requests the opportunity to meet with you and or the property owners prior to demolition of the property. Our meetings are scheduled for the 3rd Tuesday of each month, and the next one is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, September 21st, 2021, in the City Council Committee Hearing Room, 1st floor, Government Center at 6 p.m. If you have any questions, feel free to call me. Sincerely, Kristen Cantera Olivera. So that was also sent to our clerk so that she could send it to him, and Glenn Hathaway as well, the building inspector, and it was sent to the Preservation Society of Fall River. So let me get back in. Okay, here we go. So as of right now, there is a 6-month delay on that particular property. The other 2 were not listed on the register. So I know we had talked about this as tentatively happening, but we did get the official notice. So. Anyone?
Plan, what does the hospital plan to do once they demolish the buildings?
He has not said. When I spoke with him on the phone, he said he didn't know what the hospital's intentions were. And in the letter, it didn't say, but he just said, when I spoke with him, this was prior to him sending the letter, because he had called to ask me what the process was. So I told him, and I asked what they were going to do, and he said he didn't know at the time.
So they must have some sort of interim use then, I'm assuming parking, because they've already filed for a demolition permit.
I would imagine. I don't know if they're going to build anything, you know, if their intention is to build. But it is, one of the buildings is directly next door to a parking lot, so.
Right, that's 305, I think.
Yeah.
309 is tucked in the back.
In the back, yeah. So, I mean, I know there's parking there. There's parking in the sort of the opposite direction at the corner of Prospect and Hanover Street as well. Plus they have the parking garage for the hospital. Plus parking just on site in the front of the hospital. So I really don't know. I don't know if the
Yeah.
intention is for parking. I am hoping that someone either from the hospital or Attorney Burke will be willing to meet with us and at least answer some questions that we have.
Mhm. Yeah,
So-
there is a lot of parking. As I live in the neighborhood, the lots are full every single day. A lot of the staff actually do spill out into the streets, into the residential neighborhoods, and they do park on the street. Between Hanover, a lot of street parking on Hanover, Summerfield, Bigelow. So.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate. You know, I see their footprint getting bigger and bigger. Not to say that the hospital doesn't need more, you know, resources and things like that, but it's unfortunate that when it's doing that into a historic neighborhood, a neighborhood that really is filled with historic properties. So I think it definitely warrants a discussion about some of this, because there really are a lot of other properties in that area, and it would be a shame to
I
see.
think if it's for parking, they need to be more creative like other cities in other states have been. They could go under, like their current parking lots that they have. They could go down. They could go one level up. They could create greenery around it so it's not so offensive to the neighborhood. So they could be more creative rather than just infringe upon where people actually live and where they make their home,
Right.
raise their kids. And I know Charlton is in South Coast is an important, business to have here. Like we all,
Absolutely.
unfortunately, sometimes we need to be there. But I do think there are other creative ways, and I just wish they were a little more sensitive to the people of the city.
Right. And I think maybe, again, that would be a good conversation to be able to have with them, and reaching out, hoping that someone is willing to meet with us and address some of our concerns. And even if it means ultimately they're still going to tear down buildings, there are other ways, like you said, buffers, greenery, things like that won't fully take away the aesthetics of the neighborhood, or at least give sort of, give a little consideration.
And considering the city has a pretty bad problem as it is with runoff, and we're right on top of a hill, on top of one of the hills, and that's a lot of asphalt, that's a lot of runoff into the sewers, that's a lot of it's unnecessary. And Connie is right, there's so many different alternatives to solving their parking. It can be even just a one level deck up and screen it with some landscaping, and that will double their parking in a case. So there are alternatives, and especially in this neighborhood where the hospital is zoned the same as the houses. Our house here is zoned the same as the hospital. It's all general residential. There's no separate institutional zoning for the hospital, so they can expand as much as they want. There's no protection. We know that there was a threat here in the 80s when they wanted to demolish about half of the houses on Bigelow Street, including ours. And thankfully the homeowners did not want that, and they backed off. But that's not to say that it can happen down the line. So, I mean, and that's something that I would like to help out if there's a way of, at least if we can speed up getting houses listed on the register, if there's a way of getting a historic district going, something that will just kind of keep the hospital at bay and then just kind of maintain what we have here in the neighborhood.
Right. I think that neighborhood, especially because the things that you've shared with us about the history of the neighborhood, the architects, the, the way that things were built, I think is a unique little neighborhood in and of itself. And I think that would be a great neighborhood to have a local historic district for just the uniqueness of it. And so it is something we definitely should consider. And I think maybe sooner rather than later, because I don't see this slowing down. I think this might be just the beginning of more coming down the pipeline. So
Hey, Chris,
yeah,
Jason intrigued me with what he said about runoff. Perhaps the historical commission could reach out and work with Paul Ferland from the Water Sewer District about the demolition of properties like this for parking being detrimental to the sewer system because of the overflow into the system. I'm just thinking outside the box, but maybe it wouldn't be bad to contact Paul Ferland and get him on board to kind of eradicate this kind of demolition to create parking lots. I mean, you're getting rid of grass, you're getting rid of dirt, and you're putting up asphalt, and now the water's running into their sewer system, which we know over by Popeyes can't take the amount of water volume they get. So
Yep.
might be worthwhile.
That's a good idea.
Thank
I
you.
mean, the worst that could happen is the sewer department says, "Oh, stop! You're killing us."
Right. No, I think Mr. Ferland is
Good resource.
he's reasonable and yeah, definitely. I can certainly reach out to him about this.
Is Attorney Burke's office in New Bedford?
No, it's on Purchase Street.
Okay, it's a
Fall
different.
River.
It's a different attorney then. Okay.
Yeah, this one's on Purchase Street. I think 150 Purchase.
That's fine. It was Matt Thomas I was thinking of, not Matt Burke. So I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah, yep.
Thank you.
There's
Thank
got to be a
you.
way to decentivize these people from Bryan property and just leveling it. And
I actually have a personal interest in that because I know somebody who lives at 217. So
217 what, Hanover?
yeah, I know somebody that lives in that house. So I'm not happy about them talking about buying it and demolishing it and having them have to move.
This one's 317.
That's what I meant, 317. The one on the corner. Yeah, the yellow
Oh,
house.
okay. Okay, so their house is gonna be bought and demolished.
Yeah, I'll be calling them shortly and asking them if they know about it.
Like Ruben said, I agree that there's got to be a way to change this, but I don't even blame South Coast per se. I blame the city. The city ordinance is just poor. We don't protect this. We sell properties for a dime and they get flipped or demolished.
Oh, yeah.
Their own.
We have a planning board in the city and we have a zoning board of appeals that apparently don't even read our city's master plan. Because if they ever read the master plan for the city, which is what we should be following, because that's the whole purpose of a master plan for the city, then at least half of the things that are allowed to happen in the city would never be happening.
But
And
even aside from that, we don't even hold people accountable. Like we talked about Morgan Street, we don't hold
course
people
not.
accountable. So they do whatever they want to do, but they, like I said, they buy a building for a song, and then they either flip it, which is something that occurred with a little tiny piece of land near the mill on Alden Street, where they buy it for a song and it's landlocked and they wanted to flip it immediately, outbid the mill owner, the current mill owner, and then wanted to sell it to him for an outrageous price. And the city allows that. There should be a way where if you buy a piece of property, and you say you're going to do X, Y, and Z, you should have to do X, Y, and Z because you won that bid over somebody else based on what your intent was.
Right. Well, wouldn't this be a conversation with the real estate committee? Or even just the city council in general? Wouldn't this be a good conversation to have with them?
I think so.
one
But I
thing,
mean, we went to a real estate committee meeting and we saw how that all went down. So again, you have a real estate committee that doesn't even let citizens speak publicly about shenanigans basically that are going on because somebody's not there to represent themselves, but then they don't hold the person accountable to even come and represent themselves so that we can speak publicly about something. So people,
Perhaps asking for and posting a joint meeting between a historical commission and the real estate subcommittee of the city council would be a better route to go. That way there you'd both have the standing and Leo can't shut you off because it's a joint meeting. And now we've got other people who are interested attending the meeting and see where it goes.
I never thought of that. Yeah, can we do that since it's just a city council subcommittee and it's not?
Absolutely. You can have a joint meeting with anybody. You just have to get a hold of the chairman, which of course is Leo, and whether or not he'd agree, to have a joint meeting. If not, ask Cliff Ponte to have a joint meeting with the city council and historical commission. Because I think at that point, you'd probably get somebody like Kadeem or Michelle Dion to refer the whole thing to the real estate subcommittee for a joint meeting with the historical commission to talk about these type of issues. I mean, the worst that can happen is they say, no, you haven't lost anything. Besides that, if you have a joint meeting, now you get press attention because all of a sudden the Herald News, the three people that still work there are like, wait a minute, there's controversy here. I got to go so we can sell papers. Sometimes you have to look from outside the fishbowl to think of things outside the box.
So, thoughts, anyone?
My thoughts earlier, didn't get to finish. One way to decentivize these people, the city, if they wanted to, is, all right, you want to take out these buildings, then you have to build a recharge system at so many dollars to keep that groundwater from going back into the sewer system. It's really the only way they're going to be able to stop these people from knocking down buildings and just making parking lots.
I like that.
Boston does it all the time. I know it's Boston, but you can adopt these changes anywhere.
Well, the other thing about that too is, Ruben, the other thing about that is you could dedicate those fees not only to create that that retention system, but also have an annual fee that goes towards the stormwater fee to help pay off the sewer system that the taxpayers are going to be paying for when your great-grandchild graduates from college.
Absolutely. They probably don't do it because they'd rather get the runoff fees on your water bill than charge these property owners
or the developers.
Right, these developers for installing these recharge systems. That's probably why they don't do it, but they could easily come out with a different way to approach this.
Yeah, and then you charge them $5,000 a year for a license fee to have the system inspected every year by an agency to make sure it's working, and whatever the extra balance is, it goes to the stormwater fee.
Right there.
So there's all these options that the city would have for extra funding.
Yeah.
And they don't take them, but they're willing to pass on all of the burdens for coming up with extra money to the taxpayers, to the citizens, rather than getting money from other ways where it would probably be even more viable and
fair.
Yeah, fair, equitable, absolutely.
And better for the city. They're stuck in this cycle of the same things over and over again. And that's what causes all these problems.
Well, I think that's the thing. You have a mindset in this city. First of all, you have a lot of the same people getting elected over and over again, and things don't change. And then you have a mindset of people focused on such a small, like a small number of issues, that they're not looking at all of these other issues that happen, and they're not looking at ways to change things. So you're just stuck in the same mindset of the same people thinking the same things, doing the same things, never.
Yeah, they
never
have that philosophy of, we've always done it that way. It's always
Exactly.
worked.
Exactly. Except it doesn't work. It doesn't work, and the burden is unfairly placed on the shoulders of the people that it shouldn't be placed on.
Yeah, it's called kick the can down the road.
Yeah, and
We've
we
always
lose
done it
out,
that way. Kick the can down the road. We don't
we
do that.
lose out as a city. What they don't realize is we lose out as a city because everything that makes Fall River what it is, we have our identity as a city. And yes, we have our cultures, we have our restaurants, we have things like that. We also have buildings. There are buildings that make this city what it is, that make Fall River look the way that Fall River looks. And when all of these buildings are gone and all you have are these standard generic boxes that things seem to be being replaced with, the city looks just like every other city. Now you've got New Bedford, who has a completely different mindset on all of this. New Bedford retains everything about their city that gives it their character, their historic character, the flavor, their essence, everything that makes it what it is. You've got Newport that does it. You've got all of these other cities with the same historic value that we have, that really do put emphasis on these things and don't turn it into a sterile, generic, Blandsville. And that's what Fall River's doing. We're becoming Blandsville.
So
So,
a lot of that comes down to even zoning. A number of years, the city of Providence had completely revamped their zoning code across the entire city. So now, for example, in downtown, you cannot demolish a building with parking as an interim use. It's completely prohibited, even if the building is being replaced with something. It's been seen numerous times that there's all these temporary surface lots, so there has to be something that goes in its place. And even still, when they build a parking garage, now there's regulations that require ground floor retail along an A street. So that comes down to zoning, and it's across the entire city. So there's no, and I feel that the Fall River's zoning code it could probably use an overhaul. Maybe not to the extreme that Providence did, but it can use some tweaking, especially when considering places like a residential neighborhood here with a hospital, or downtown with the train coming. Who knows? There might be, assuming there's going to be a complete revamp of some of the vacant storefronts downtown. There's going to be a push for more apartments. So, that's something that we'll probably have to consider.
mhm. So what about the possibility of putting together some type of a presentation to address the city council, at least the city council, showing maybe some before and afters of what we've lost already, even just in recent times, like what we've lost of our historic buildings, and then ideas like things that Ruben was talking about, and things that Jason's talking about, and things that are being done in other places that really could just as easily be done here, and the reasons why, the validity, why it makes sense, why economically it's more viable, why aesthetically it's more viable for the city, why just all the benefits of doing these things. What about something like that? Do you think that's an idea? That's something we should maybe think about? Because we can't keep just sitting here spinning our wheels, going through the same things with each other, because we all know this. It has to go beyond us. It's got to get out there to the people that are making the rules.
I agree with you, but I think in the meantime, in the short interim, I think it's more important for us to meet with South Coast. We,
Yes.
Oh,
That's the
no,
plan right now.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we need to get on that, and then long-term, kind of follow that. And I mean, it'd be great to show before and afters, but they know the before and afters.
But it's different when you see, you can know it, but when you see it, when it's right there in your face, it makes much more of an
No,
impact.
I agree, and we can put something like that together, but until we have a administration, including the city council, including everyone that has the power to make changes, until they're sensitive to the importance of historic properties, neighborhoods, the change that it makes to neighborhoods, the improvement that it makes to the neighborhoods, until they get, it's like they don't get it. And I don't know how to make them get it. I don't know why our sister city gets it.
But
So,
this might be a way.
yeah, I mean, I just think that people that are sitting in office just don't get it. And
Right.
it's not that I dislike them or anything like, they just don't get it. And either that or they chase the vote, versus then really what the right thing is to do. I mean, it's just not,
Kristen, would a meeting with the Historic Commission in New Bedford, let's sit with them, get their ideas, get their structure, see what they've been doing, how they do it, how they work with their government officials. It would give us a lot of insight, and then we could do some structuring here.
Well, I think the place to start with, actually, even beyond them, they have a historic planner. They have a person that works in
Sure.
City Hall, that's a historic planner, and that's what she is tasked with doing. And she works directly with the historical commission, but their administration hires a historic planner because they feel that it is that important.
Yeah, and she works on the planning board, so they have a large planning board. We work with poor Bill, he's all alone. We have one. They
Right.
have,
And
I believe, 7 or 8.
right. But Bill, the thing, at least we do have a city planner who does understand the value of
Yes, he
historic
does.
preservation. He really truly does. But
Mhm.
he is so outnumbered and he's so understaffed that there isn't a lot that he can do. But I think it has to go well beyond Mr. Kenny. It has to go to the administration, to the city council. And I understand what Connie's saying, and you're absolutely right. We need to start with a meeting with South Coast. First and foremost, that has to happen. I'm talking about, like, concurrent with that, aside from what's going on there, putting something together to reach the city council. If this city council doesn't want to listen and this administration doesn't want to listen, then we present it to the next ones. But it doesn't mean don't try and do it. We have to at least attempt to get them to
Again,
understand.
the suggestion to sit with the city of New Bedford, people who are involved in
Mhm,
their historic sections,
mhm.
just to find, they had to get from where they were to where they are now. And they've got direction. So maybe if we just sit, find out what they did, how they did it, what their proposals are.
Mhm.
Again, what kind of support that they receive or do not receive. And that'll help us build a program for ourselves to make a presentation.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation at this point, you know.
Hey, Chris,
Yes.
I think what Rick is bringing up is an excellent point. I think maybe you could invite the historic planner from New Bedford to come to one of your next meetings for to pick their brains and have them, because like Rick said, they've gone through they've grown up. I mean, they've gone from diapers to college degrees, and there's no sense in having the Fall River Historical Commission have to go buy Pampers when you can get somebody like the historical planner from New Bedford to help you get into college, if you will, for lack of a better expression, and see what they've done. See what they've done in New Bedford. See what's worked. See what mistakes they've, what landmines have they walked in, so you don't walk on the same landmines. And that might be a good. Obviously, number one, you have to have South Coast. Number two, you got to get some attention, and you got to educate yourself. I mean, the girl from Maryland, Virginia, she's doing a good job with that project. But reach out to the historical planner and see if he or she wants to come to your meeting and give you a synopsis of what they see. I think the question to that planner would be, if you were to leave New Bedford and come to Fall River, what things would you change, and what things would you think what things are we doing well, and what would you change, and see where it goes. I mean, the worst that can happen is they say, hey, I'm so busy over here in New Bedford, I haven't got time, and that's fine.
No, I don't think she would, because I've spoken with her and she always said that I could reach out to her if need be.
But
so
I mean, if
I
she
think
came to a meeting and, obviously a Zoom meeting is the best kind,
Mhm.
although the City of Fall River does put them on YouTube tomorrow. But that way there, everybody can get educated, and especially when you're talking about merging the two historical boards. And I just think you guys have a great future in the next several months. Unfortunately, I don't think you're going to get much change done before January, whoever the new mayor is.
Right.
And I mean, I think right now we're at campaign season, and nobody wants to upset anybody. It may cost them a vote, but you guys just keep. And I think as far as South Coast, I think Ruben's idea was, okay. You wanted to demolish. You want to knock down these 3 buildings, and you want to expand that parking lot from corner to corner. What are you going to do about the water?
So I can reach out to Paul Ferlin, and I can reach out to the planner.
The planner, yeah.
in Bedford, and we'll work on that. We'll work on getting her to one of our next meetings. Jason and Connie, maybe, do you want to reach out to South Coast, like either the lawyer or someone at South Coast themselves, and see if we can at least get them to have a conversation with us as well?
I think that's important.
That's the immediate need right now.
Okay. So, and I mean, it gives us time, like Patrick is saying, it's campaign season, so we probably won't get to accomplish a lot, but it does give us time to get our ducks in a row. And I mean, South Coast, we can accomplish more, but as far as administration and things like that, it gives us a chance to get our ducks in a row, get our, questions answered, get a sort of a presentation together, and then go from there. Then we'll be ready when the time comes to move forward with this, and hopefully we'll be merged by then as one commission as well.
And South Coast isn't moving for 6 months anyway, so they're not going to be able to do anything till after the new administration, whoever it is, either.
Right.
I mean, yes, I would have them in at the September meeting and say, hey, let's talk about, you want to knock these, where's the water going?
Rick,
Yes,
if I were to give you her contact information, the woman in New Bedford, do you want to reach out to her? And then
certainly,
I'll reach out to Paul Ferlin?
certainly.
Okay, I'll do that. So you can reach out to her, I'll reach out to Paul Ferlin. And if I can set something up, Ruben, with meeting with Paul, would you want to come to that meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then Connie and Jason, you will work on South Coast. Sounds good.
Yep.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that? Hanover, we done?
You can move on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll shut up now that I'm not a member.
We have a lot going on.
Yes, no, it's okay, Patrick, we do.
I know, I'm only having fun with you.
Yeah, no, but we appreciate your input. You've given a lot of, good food for thought here, so we appreciate that.
That's because of my years of experience living all over the country.
That is true too, and you've seen a lot, you know. Okay, so new business, I don't have any as of right now, but if anybody knows of anything, has anything new they want to just, anything? No, okay. So if I can get a motion to adjourn, and we will need to do a roll call after that from each.
Oh,
commission.
sorry, just quickly, the Four River Mills exchanged hands, the Flint Mills, I should say. Someone bought the Flint Mill.
It's on the front page of the paper today.
Yeah, it was in the Herald News. A developer bought it,
Which mill?
and Flint Mill.
The one was on our list at 847 Pleasant or whatever.
No, that's
No.
Woodwork.
I believe the Flint Mills are on Alden Street.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, I know which one it is. It's the one next to the park
Yes,
and next to the one that they fixed up. Okay,
just exchanged hands, so we should keep an eye on it.
okay.
And Ruben, thank you. You reminded me. The Sagamore. Sorry. There's a phone in the background. The Sagamore number 2 mill or number 3. It's on 8th Street across from the one that was demolished. That changed hands as well. And the landlord or the new owners are outside of Boston, I think. But the property owners are planning on retaining all the tenants. They do want to perform a number of improvements to the exterior of the building, including replacing the roof. They do want to replace the windows, long-term thing. And the windows, if you drive by it, they're in incredibly rough shape. But on the side, I do rent space out of that particular warehouse or that building. And the owner, I'm sorry, the property manager was provided with the information regarding CPA funds because the building is on the National Register, and to provide that to the landlord because I'm sure that they're not aware of that process. So at least that will help maintain the exterior of the building.
Well, I think they should look into, because it's on the National Register, they really should look into historic tax credits.
That too. I mentioned that to him as well. That
They would certainly get a lot more in historic tax credits
Right.
than the possibility of CPC, because CPC right now is not focused on private developers. They are focusing on public and nonprofits.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things I know in the past it was something that they've done, but right now we've talked about not focusing on that and focusing on especially public
Right.
properties and then some nonprofits. So I would say they really should look into tax credits as well.
Yes. Yes, he was informed of that because they're planning on investing into the property, which is good, versus demolishing the structure.
Great,
So yeah,
thank you.
welcome.
Anything else? Okay, so if I can get a motion from a historical commission member to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Roll call, Connie Sewell,
Yes.
Rick Mancini,
Yes.
Ruben Amaral,
Yes.
and Kristen Cantara Oliveri, yes. And now if I can get a motion from the Historic District Commission to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, Connie Sewell,
Yes.
Rick Mancini,
Yes.
Jason Bouchard Naraki,
Yes.
and Kristen Cantara Oliveri, yes. So we will adjourn. Our next meeting is scheduled right now for next Monday, August 23rd at 6 p.m. And that will also be a Zoom meeting. And again, that will also be available on the FRG TV Facebook page. So with that, I will bid everyone a good night and Thank you all, and hopefully see you again at the next meeting.
Good night, everybody.
Night,
Good
everyone.
night. Good
Hey.
night now. Have a good week.